Greetings and salutations, this is Emperor Vespasian and his trusty sidekick.
Hello.
We're going to be having a look at the Nakajima Ki 43 for the Japanese Air Force for bolt action. These are scratch built models. I made them out of card and stuff. I haven't painted it inside yet, I'll get into that later. But for the purposes of this video you only need to see the top half, so pretend you didn't see the bottom. Did you see it?
No.
You didn't see it? No, I didn't see it either. So, as far as you're concerned, it's got perfect markings and everything underneath. Just trust me on this. I'm going to design a something to clip onto the base, magnets or something to clip onto the base, so I can have them on wheels. So we can have them actually landed, so we can play games on an airfield, and so you can just slip the wheels on and off. That's the idea when I get around to it, which is why I haven't done the underside yet. But you know what? That's a whole other video. So, Nakajima was the standard army fighter. Japan had two air forces. They are Army Air Force and the Navy Air Force, and these belong to the Army. Although, you know, swings and roundabouts. So this was Japan's standard fighter plane of the Japanese Army. It was the next generation on from the Ki-27, which was Japan's standard fighter up to 1940. So these guys were pretty much a standard plane, and if you saw a Japanese plane in combat, you were probably fighting one of these, not a Zero. There weren't that many Zeros built, and most Zeros were misidentified, or most of these were misidentified as Zeros. So when you hear about Zeros attacking things, it's probably actually these guys who were doing it. Right, so armament-wise, it's got two heavy machine guns, meaning it's got actually the guns aren't that good. No. They're not cannon, but they do fire 3 shots. Cannon only fire 2. They do have a +1 penetration, so against other aircraft that's actually quite good. But against ground targets, you know, it gives you 6 dice in combat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With a +1 AP, that's not too bad.
It's fighting infantry.
Yeah, not too bad. Not as good as MMGs. MMGs fire 4 dice each. We've got the Chinese fighter that fires 6 MMGs at the same time.
Not as good as Zero.
Yeah, well, no, not as good as a Zero.
Nothing can be as good as Zero.
Bomb load. It carries two 501 pound bombs, which are actually 490 pound bombs because of the ammunition used in the bombs wasn't actually that good, so the explosive in the bombs wasn't good, so Japanese made bombs slightly bigger to make them the same amount of power as other bombs.
Which weighed more.
Yeah, the 500 pound bomb is your basic anti-ship, anti-tank type bomb. It was really good at sinking ships. One of these could split a ship in half. Or
making a big ditch for the enemy to have cover.
Yeah, if you're playing naval games, what the Japanese would do is, or an Air Force game, they would drop one or two 250 pound bombs, which are fragmentation bombs, on a ship, and that would pretty much kill all the gun crew, make all the guns inoperative, cut all the phone lines and everything. And then your planes would come in with your 500 pound bombs and drop the bombs, because it was safer to drop the bombs after you'd already bombed the plane. That's how it worked in principle. The Japanese worked this stuff out long before we did. So yeah, generally you'd send in a couple of fast fighters first that would drop a 250 pound bomb, which was actually a 220 pound European style bomb, 250 Japanese pound bomb, and that's what you do. So the 500 pound bomb's pretty good in bolt action. It's HED3 +4 penetration. It's an anti-tank bomb. It's a good bomb. It's not the best bomb in the world, but it's a decent bit of ordnance you can drop.
Good for early war.
Yeah, early war, that's what we're talking about. I mean, late war, the standard German fighter carried a 1,200 pound bomb. I mean, that would make your bum pucker, wouldn't it? I mean, that would level a house. That would level our house. That would level half of our street. So
leave a massive ditch.
Yeah, there'd be a huge hole. You could just, I don't know, redecorate. But these 500 pound bomb is pretty much one of the heaviest bombs you're going to get at the early part of the Second World War. Bear in mind the Japanese have been in the war for 3 years before the British turned up to it. Next thing, technically the pilot is a fanatic, so you get a reroll morale dice. So when you get pins, you're trying to attack, you've got pins on you, your pins might mean that your aircraft doesn't actually want to fight and it doesn't engage that turn.
Which you should have seen before.
Which if you've seen our campaign, that happened really badly to some of our planes. Anti-aircraft pins.
I was still firing on my men.
Yeah.
No, my pilot's a coward. He will not.
Yeah, the pilots refuse to follow orders. It's because basically you got flak and stuff coming in, the pilot decides to go around and go again. Japanese get to re-roll that because they're fanatics. The pilot doesn't care if he's getting hit by anti-aircraft fire, he's going into attack. He's also an interceptor, so you put these aircraft on cap. So if you pay your points for the plane, you put it on cap, which means it gets roll initiative to roll its morale in order to intercept a plane that might be attacking one of your planes or attacking one of your ground targets. So,
unless you're Russians and they're cowed out.
Yeah, unless you're Russians and you get 6 pins on you and you just don't play anymore. You just fly around in the distance watching the battle from afar.
Which is actually what he did.
Which is what he did.
For about 3 turns.
Yeah. And then later on you fly home and said, what a valiant battle you fought, holding off all those aircraft.
But in the end, they shoot down Polish aircraft.
Yeah. It's like the German pilots would fly up to the British coast, fly down the British coast firing their cannons, and then fly home and say how well they'd done shooting down British aircraft. They never actually crossed the coast, they just, hey, that's warfare.
Valid.
Yeah. Also, you can't actually land with ammunition. So, planes flying over the channel on the way home would fire their guns all the way home because they would use up all the ammunition. Because if you try and land a plane with ammunition, your plane will just fold up because it's too heavy. A good side of these planes and a bad side of these planes is they were designed with rugged landing gear to land and take off on non-runways, on roads and things like that. So they could operate in the jungle if you just cleared a bit of land. So you didn't need a metalised runway to land and take off. So that's a good thing about them. Bad thing about them, they did tend to crash when they landed because pilots would try to land with half fuel and stuff like that. Because many of the aircraft didn't carry self-sealing fuel tanks, so you couldn't drop your fuel tank. So you landed with your planes half full of fuel and bingo. But that was a problem in China, not really elsewhere. So armour-wise, it's only got 5+ armour because it's got no armour.
That's nice.
Which is actually unarmoured. Japanese planes didn't.
Sounds like 0.
Yeah, Japanese planes did not have armour. They didn't. Some of them later on were actually given armour, but the pilots would just tear the armour out and then take off because they didn't want armour. The reason they don't want armour is the idea is the faster you move, the quicker you are catching the enemy. So you don't need the armour because it's the enemy that's getting hit.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
it works as Russians.
Yes, unfortunately, when you're meeting the pretty well-made American aircraft later on in the war, you tend to find. What are you doing? When you meet some of the better built American aircraft later in the war, the American aircraft are armoured and the American aircraft are just as fast as the Japanese planes, so it's the Japanese who are on the receiving end. Technically you can buy the plane at 96 points as an inexperienced plane. Regular plane 120, veteran 144. I'd go veteran because if you're doing early war, all the pilots are veteran anyway.
Yeah, I'd go veteran.
So they're all veteran. So if you want to be realistic, make all your pilots veteran, make all your other enemy pilots, or the Allied pilots, non-veteran. Barring a few American pilots who had actually fought in China. Chinese Americans who fought in China and then went back to join the American Air Force. They were veteran pilots, but the average American pilot had no clue what he was doing. So,
if you had no clue what you're doing, then you probably won't be able to get off the ground in the first place.
Well, the British pilots were trained to drop bombs, they were never trained in air combat. So the British pilots in Malaya, what they'd done their entire career is go and drop bombs on little villages in the middle of the jungle because they weren't paying taxes or they didn't obey the white man. So they're trained to bomb. They might never have actually carried out a bombing run, most of them hadn't. But they were actually trained to do that, to attack ground targets. They weren't trained in air combat. Because it was just never... Who we're going to go up against in Malaya? Who's got an air force in Malaya that we're going to fight against? Nobody. Why would you train pilots to fight aircraft if... Oh no, the Japanese have arrived. Didn't think of that. That's bad planning. And anyway, Japanese can't fly planes properly because they're really small and they have John glasses and they can't travel fast or their brain falls out. Because we were extremely racist and we thought very little of the Japanese. In actual fact, no one told the Japanese that they were supposed to be bad at flying. Just never occurred to the Japanese to be bad at flying. They decided to be really good at it. So our planes got shot out of the sky. So did the American planes. Although actually it's not the American planes' fault they were shot out of the sky. It was the base commanders who ordered the planes to circle with full fuel tanks, and by the time the Japanese arrived, they had no fuel. But that was because of Operational Plan Orange, was it?
I have no idea.
It's the emergency plan you have if you go to war with each country. You have a colour for each country. But that's besides the point. In fact, we should do a video on that actually, because that's a really interesting subject. Which was
purple?
Red was for going to war with Britain. I think orange was going to war with Japan. I think that's off the top of my head. I might be wrong. Please look it up. Wikipedia exists. Right. So Nakajima standard fighter. Unfortunately, we can't use it for our early wars against the Chinese because it was built before the First World War, but after Japan was fighting the war. So you get to Ki-27 mostly. We did used to use these as Ki-27s. Can you pass me a Ki?
Ki-27?
Yeah, it's the red nose one.
Yeah, I know.
Before we had a Ki-27, we didn't have any models for it, and so we basically used these as Ki-27. So you will see them in our games when you see us play. If you look at those old games, that's actually a Ki-27. They're relatively similar, and so we basically decided to use these as Ki-27s, but they were actually models of Ki-43s.
And the same.
The slightly different engine. The engine had another set of pistons on the outside for the older version. This engine had them on the inside, so the cowling was thinner.
Was the Ki-27 made before this plane?
Yeah, 1933, I think the Ki-27 first.
Ki-27s look more advanced.
They were good for China. They were good for fighting against people who had really rubbish Russian aircraft. And American pea shooters. There's actually an American plane called a pea shooter. And it literally was a pea shooter compared to this guy who was absolutely awesome and just slaughtered its way across the skies of China. And then the Americans brought in some the Tomahawk. And it was their turn to fall out of the sky on fire because the American Tomahawk was awesome. And then these guys turned up and the American Tomahawk then fell out of the sky. The Americans had some really good planes. Some of the early war American planes were actually really good, but because they were coming up at the wrong time against the Japanese, they got a bad record. But they were actually really good planes. It's just they had inexperienced pilots, really rubbish runways. The Japanese would bomb American runways and British runways, and they would bomb them with bombs that were designed to damage the vehicles and put potholes which were repairable by the Japanese troops. But yeah.
You know, when a plane took off, it had bumpy rides.
Yeah, whereas these guys could actually take off from those runways. Because you fill them in with sand, it doesn't matter that they're filled in with sand for these guys. If you're trying to take off with a P41, the P41's wings will fall off, if you notice. Same with the Hurricane. Anyway, it doesn't have any suspension, basically. Ki-43, pretty good plane. We've got two of them because these were the only planes we were going to be using because we were only doing early war, and then we expanded to do slightly later and then early World War II. We got two because we were only going to be using two, and then we ended up getting some slightly more modern planes, and then we decided to go back and actually design one for this because then you could actually see both on the battlefield at the same time.
But we were thinking of doing late war when we started this one. I'm like, everybody does late war.
Yeah, that's why we do early war and it is a lot more fun.
And no one does early war at all.
Yeah.
It's just us.
And early war, Japanese tanks, although they're a hilarious joke, are awesome.
No.
They are actually what they were built for. Whereas late war, Japanese tanks are just a good laugh, and you just shoot at them and they explode because they weren't suited to the late war. They were built for the early war.
You got a late war tank.
Oh yeah, they had lots of late war tanks, but we never fought them because they were all hidden in Japan, ready for American invasion.
Yeah, and I've seen pictures of them, and they are ginormous.
Yeah, they've got some pretty good tanks. Like the Americans built the biggest tank in the Second World War. Believe it or not, no one will believe me, but I tell them. They say, no, Germans did, they built that magic tank. Yeah, well, the Germans never built that tank, they built one too, get over it.
What about Russians?
well, they started the war with super heavy, massive tanks. The Americans built this massive tank and they realised they couldn't actually fit it on a ship to carry it over to Europe, so they never used it.
America's basically an island compared to
it's a huge island.
To attack.
You can't physically get anywhere else.
We can't make a big tank unless we have a colony somewhere with a factory.
Yeah, we need to have colonies. That's the point. So Malaya, we're going to do a Malayan campaign. That's one of our plots. So we're moving towards that. Hence the building of new aircraft and stuff we need for the campaign to fit the campaign. And yeah, so that is this airplane. I hope you like it. Do you have any questions on it?
There were the questions we had.
There were the questions we had. Do you have any tactical ideas on how to use it?
My tactical ideas for these was leave on tap.
Yeah,
Cap, indeed.
Stick on combat air patrol. That's it.
They're incredibly good at cap.
Yeah, 60 air combat. Yeah, they're really good at cap.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so anything Russian is what? Maximum 4? Yeah, okay. Japan wins again. So there you go. Last point, I think it's quite an interesting point, is the radio. These guys are fitted with radios. Most aircraft weren't in the real world. These guys were actually fitted with radios, these guys. Unfortunately for the Japanese, the radio's aerial went from the back of the plane to the front inside the frame. That meant that when you're using your radar, your radio to direction finder to tell you where you're going, if you're flying towards the target, you get a full signal because you're flying towards the target. Right? Because your aerial is lined up with the radar.
Right, it's going to go terrible.
If you're flying away from the target, you get the same signal. So if it's poor visibility, the Japanese pilot could be flying off into the distance while thinking he is actually flying home, and some pilots were actually lost because of that. Also, all Japanese planes did have radios. These versions did have radios, most didn't. The ones that did have radios, they often didn't use them for radio communication. They actually just listened to the radio on them. They literally tuned into Radio Hanoi that's Vietnam. What was the Radio Tokyo? They would tune into Radio Tokyo and listen to the soothing sounds of dance music. So when they were actually fighting in air combat, they didn't have the radio switched on. They were listening to dance music.
Tokyo be bombed.
So they actually had a built-in soundtrack. Interviews with American pilots show exactly the same. Even though they were fitted with radios, they were supposed to talk to each other and say, "Look out, there's a guy on your tail." Instead, they were like listening to music. So yeah, that's because that's humans. Humans are humans. They never behave how you're supposed to behave. Humans are daft. So a lot of these planes were actually lost by flying in the wrong direction on their way home and not making it. That's a bit of a downside to the radio system. Also, the radio system only had a range of 50 miles, so in most of the Pacific, you're not within 50 miles of a radio station anyway. You have to be within 50 miles of a relay station in order to pick up the radio, so, in most Pacific War battles, certainly Malaya, the only radio channel you're going to be able to pick up isn't going to be Japanese, it's going to be the British BBC broadcasting in Singapore, saying how the British are totally winning on all fronts.
FM.
Yeah, so you're tuning to that and it says, "This is the BBC, we are winning on all fronts." And the Japanese pilot looks out of the window and sees Singapore on fire and thousands of Japanese troops rushing in going, "I'm not sure if I believe the BBC." Yeah, that's propaganda fire. That's the end of the video. I just thought I'd mention the radio thing because it's like quite an interesting thing. And I could do a whole video on that. But the radios used on planes in the Second World War, most of the words actually used for radios. They weren't used as radios. But anyway, besides the point.
One day they're going to hide a camera in here and they're going to see what behind the scenes I would do.
Yeah.
So before the video starts, it's like 10 minutes of talking about planes and stuff, and then we start the video.
Yeah, and then we talk about it at night when I'm in bed asleep and I just start talking about planes. Yeah. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. He does the arty thing.
So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and comment down below what you think of the, what's the name?
It's the KI-43, this one.
What you think of the
Nakajima.
KI-43 compared to the KI-27.
Yeah. Well, they haven't done a video on the 27 yet, so.
Yeah, we told them about them. We comparing them.
Okay, right. Well, we'll do the video on the 27 next then.
Alright, yeah. Okay, see ya. That's everything from me.
And everything from him. Goodbye.